Hi, everybody, and welcome to GLP's 10 out of 10. And with us this week is lighting designer Patrick Woodroffe. Patrick is one of the most well-known and well-regarded lighting designers in the live entertainment industry. In a career that spans more than 3 decades so far, Patrick has worked with an incredible roster of performers in every corner of the world and in a full portfolio of events: theatre, opera, dance, film, television, art projects, architectural lighting, exhibitions, and a list of live music credits unlike any other. You'll be hard pushed not to have seen one of his designs at some point. A few years ago, Patrick teamed up with Adam Bassett to form Woodroffe Bassett Design, which has grown to become one of the best known and most prolific lighting design brands operating today. Following his work on the opening and closing ceremonies of the London 2012 Olympic Games, Patrick was awarded the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Patrick says, collaborating with artists, designers, directors, and producers to bring their performances and creations to life with light is a marvelous way to earn a living. We love our jobs. Welcome, Patrick Woodroffe.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
It's
I'm in
fantastic.
good company. I've really enjoyed the other ones I've seen. And I should start by owning up to Ethan Webber's question, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you, the Spinal Tap moment? And he was at Madison Square Garden and he said very discreetly, somebody leant forward. Well, that would have been me. Pressing the button on lighting and plunging the stage into darkness.
Yeah.
It's so sweet, Ethan. So anyway, I own up to that.
You didn't put the name out. That's fantastic. That's great to join that part of the story together. We've got our 10 questions that we want to pose to you. So let's maybe crack on with the first one. And that is, what was your first show as a designer?
Well, remember when I started, you didn't really have lighting designers. You just had somebody, you just do the lights. And I worked for a little company, lighting company in London called ESP, run by Brian Croft. I think the first band I did the lights for was the Osmonds.
Okay.
And it was a little tour, and it was me and Bill Wally. Do you remember Bill Wally? He invented the Avo Lights board. But I remember doing a show at Earl's Court with the Osmond brothers.
Right.
And they'd come up with this amazing thing, which was they used a Foy's flying system. And no one had ever used that in a rock concert. It was used for, Peter Pan at the Panto. And they came out on stage, the 5 of them lined up with 10,000 screaming kids. And Donnie was the one they all loved. And they started with crazy horses, wow, wow. And at the first chorus, he just took off from the stage and he just flew all the way up the center of Earl's Court, literally touching distance above their heads to the end of the arena. And he turned around and he came back. And it was one of the most thrilling things I'd ever seen. And that was one of the first tours I ever did, yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And to be pushing that level of production technology, as you say, at that point in time, that's
yeah, everyone had seen all that stuff. They were great. They were a very nice bunch. I like them.
Great crowd to hang out with. That's brilliant. So I'm sure, obviously, over such an awesome career, there's been the odd, apart from Ethan's moment at Madison Square Garden. I'm sure you must have had a Spinal Tap moment of your own when everything seemed to be going so well and so fine, and then it suddenly turned.
You can, but remember, with lighting, you can get away with it. If you're doing sound and the microphones goes down, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
But I will tell you about I remember doing Swan Lake at the Albert Hall in the round with 24 VL1s. It was the first time anyone had used a Very Light in opera or ballet or anything like that. And I'd come in early that day because I wanted to add one little change. And Swan Lake in the round is a beautiful piece. It has 4 acts, and the first and the third acts are known as the white acts. And that's where you have, 1,000, well, in that case, there were 120 swans in white tutus on the circular stage in the middle of the Albert Hall, dry ice, the most beautiful thing you'd seen. And as the music built over that, the 10 minutes of the piece, it started very dark blue, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter. It was a fabulous spectacle. And I wanted to put in an extra cue. And Dave Hill was programming the show, and he wasn't in. He was a bit late that day. But there was a tech there, and I said, can you just do it? It's in between queue 20 and 21. I want to put in another queue, and it just changes it from a medium blue to a slightly lighter blue before it goes to the steel blue. Anyway, it was the opening night. Princess Diana was there. We were all introduced to Princess Diana. And Muhammad Al-Fayed was there for some reason. He had paid for it all. And I was up in the box with my family, a glass of champagne. Came up to this moment. There was the medium blue clue, beautiful, little bit lifting the music. Oh, elegantly, all the lights beautifully to this new color I put in. And I completely relaxed. I thought, that was fantastic. Until the cue that followed, at which point 120 white swans on the Albert Hall stage all turned to green, to red, to blue, to yellow, to purple, and then to the steel blue again. He hadn't got the cue following.
That's the one. That's the one. That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And in front of an audience like that, like you say, that's a real moment to just cringe and curl up into a ball.
Yeah.
So next, our next question is, what's the best piece of advice that anyone has ever given you?
Well, I think I've shared this one before, but the first time I worked for the Rolling Stones was in 1982. Mick Brigden, who was their sort of creative director at the time, just before the show, he said, well, why don't you come down and talk to Mick and meet him properly and see if he's got any thoughts, you know? And I went down to the bowels of the earth, one of those funny old English Scottish theatres, you know, smelly little corridors, to his dressing room, and, you know, right at the bottom. And I can see him now sitting in a beautiful white makeup chair. And Mick Brigden said, any tips for Patrick, anything you want to say to him about the lighting? And Mick said, well, he said, I guess bright for the fast numbers and darker for the ballads. And that was it.
No, it's right.
Something that I've stuck to for 35 years.
You've built a career from that. Over your career, professionally, I mean, what would you say is your proudest achievement?
One that I'm very proud of was Romeo and Juliet at the Vienna Staatsopera, and it was the first opera I'd ever done. And the director was a guy called Jürgen Flimm, a German director. And he had been asked to do Romeo and Juliet at the Staatsopera. And he said, why don't I do it just with lighting and not use any scenery? Of course, the Staatsopera loved that because they wouldn't have to build a set. But I said, hang on a minute, I can't just use the lights that you've got. If I'm going to do a show just with lighting, I've got to have some proper lights. And persuaded them to buy 40 Komars, I think they were, moving lights.
Right.
And we did the whole show with just lighting. We didn't even have a balcony. We had a, I can't remember what we did, illuminated disc on the stage or something.
Wow. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So obviously we've all been spending a lot of time at home recently. What do you normally do in your downtime?
Well, it's changed a bit. I mean, you know, I used to travel an awful lot all the time, and I travel slightly less now since I have Adam and our partner Terry, you know, and a little team. I don't travel quite as much, but still a lot. And really, when I got home, there was very little I'd want to do except to just be here with my family and live a normal life. But it's been quite interesting in lockdown. And I mean, I do all the things that people like to do: walk and read and write and cook and sleep and swim, all those things. But in lockdown, it's been very different. And the one common factor that I hear as I talk to my friends is everyone says how quickly the time passes. And rather than the time dragging, which one might assume it will be the case, doing the same things every day and not being able to go out anywhere, I find the time flies by.
That's very true. That's true. I could absolutely agree with that. Obviously, you know, you've worked at every, as we mentioned, you know, in every corner of the world, and some venues that existed only for the shows that you were being a part of. But do you have a preferred venue? You know, a favorite venue from somewhere in the world?
A really special venue is the Maracanã Stadium in Brazil. And I spend a lot of time in Brazil now, but the first time I ever went there was to do a show with Tina Turner. And not many people had performed there, certainly not there had been one Rock in Rio at that point. And the first time I saw it, I went to Rio like a month before the show to meet the people who were going to direct the show and talk to the producers and the promoters to see what we could do in the stadium. And it was a Sunday, and they said, oh, we'll take you up there. The guy who took me up there, he took me up into this little elevator, And we went up and the doors opened and I was standing behind the final row, the highest seat in the whole stadium, literally one pace forward, and it was the row of things. And as the door opened, there was just this roar, and there was 100,000 people in the football match going on below us.
Incredible. That's incredible. There's certainly, a passionate nation of people. But, you mentioned that you do a lot of reading. In terms of music, if you were, stuck on a desert island or stuck in lockdown, is there a particular artist or a particular album that you would just absolutely want to have close by that you could listen to?
If I had to choose somebody, it would be Stevie Wonder, I think. And if I had to choose a song, I'd choose Overjoyed, because it's a beautiful song. It was sort of like, I'd married Lucy at that time.
There we go. That's a brilliant choice, and a brilliant musician. Obviously, still very.
He's
still
a
very
wonder. The sweetest guy, lovely man.
Winding back, if you could go and visit the teenage Patrick Woodroffe, and you could give him one piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give him?
Well, I'll give two answers. One is light everything you can. So if you're at college, light your grandmother's birthday, or the little local band in the club, or your bathroom, or just learn to work with light, and also to observe it and keep a journal. But I think if there was a more general piece of advice, the one that I wish that I had, it's to worry less.
Right.
And I can say that now at the grand old age of 66, that when I still worry about things, of course I do, professionally, if I'm working, is this going to be okay? That's going to be okay. But what I have found is that invariably the things that you worry about all turn out fine. It's one's own fear, it's one's own concern that is the worry.
But that is some great advice. Worry less. Yeah. If you could sit down with one person for they could be alive, they could be dead, for a cup of coffee and a casual conversation, who would that be?
Well, in the present circumstance, anybody, really, because I haven't spoken to hardly anybody at all. I thought about it, and it sounds a bit grand, but I was thinking about Caravaggio, the 16th century Italian artist who was a master of light, and he painted these extraordinary pictures of natural light in a time when people weren't really doing that. They were much more prescribed, the paintings they were doing. And I figured if I could have an evening with him, go back in time, I'd get some wonderful, and I'd tell him about what I did. He'd probably be pretty fascinated in the Italian sort of a way. And you'd end up having a jolly good dinner afterwards and meeting some of his interesting friends.
That's right.
It'd be a good bet.
Take you to all his favourite hangouts.
There you go.
That would be brilliant. Brilliant. Wow, what a fantastic answer. And just like that, we're up to our final question. We've mentioned your work on the Olympic Games, so we've done a little twist on that. So in a moment, you're going to get a call from the British Olympic Committee, and they're gonna call you up. Now it could be for the Winter Games or the Summer Games, but the question is, so what sport are they going to call you up for? What would you like to have a go at?
Then the one I chose was fencing, only because I think they've got very cool gear, don't they? They look pretty fantastic in those nice uniforms, and it's very elegant, the thing. And also, it doesn't look like you'd have to be that fit to do it, because it's all done in little bursts, isn't it? You're not having,
it's true. It's only a few steps forward and backwards.
And give me a nice épée or a foil or a sabre. Three of them, aren't there? And
yes,
that would be me.
That's right. No, it's a fascinating sport to watch.
Very good question. Now I'm trying to think what other people have chosen. Somebody chose a bobsleigh, I think, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah, Ethan was talking about the bobsled and the roof. So there's been a few different. One person did say they'd just sit it out and be a commentator. Patrick, thank you so much. It's been fascinating talking with you. Great insights, just a brilliant conversation. Thank you very much. I hope that the lockdown continues to treat you and your family well.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us.